Hello, Frank. This is Alan Smith. I'm from Vidalia, Georgia, home of the sweet onion, and that might be some challenge for some of your folks out there that think they have the sweet onion. But anyway, I'm a 37-year retired Department of the Army civilian. I spent 20 years of that 37 years as an athletic director. I officiated high school basketball for 50 years, college for 15. I've served on the International Association of Approved Basketball Officials for 5 years. I worked as a state liaison with officials for going on probably 28 years. I'm currently on the board of directors for the Georgia Athletic Coaches Association. I take my role as executive director of the Georgia Athletic Officials Association very seriously. The mission of the GAOA is to promote excellence in officiating, advocate for officials' best interests, and amplify officials' voices on matters important to them. The GAOA is a 501c3, and we're also proud of our relationship with the National Association of Sports Officials and Referee Magazine. And if you go to our website, www.gaathletics.org, you will see on every sport that's in Georgia, Referee Magazine is thoughtful enough to put their articles on those sport-specific pages, and that's a big portion of our training program. We have an annual conference, Officiate Georgia Day, that we do late July. We hold clinics, and we also liaison for the officials when it comes down to pay, anything that affects their environment.
Okay, so let's lay some groundwork for the lay people that aren't officially involved in this. Let's use we talk basketball off the air. What is the criteria to become a high school basketball official? Or let's make it a junior high school basketball official.
Well, for junior high, you would join an association. They would put you through a training program, and you would work your way up to different levels of games until you get to the high school. And at that point, it comes a little bit more involved with the training. You have to go to basketball camps once every couple of years. You have to take a certification test, make 85 or above to work postseason, 75 to officiate regular season. You have to have a background check once every 5 years. So it becomes and the key to officiating is the local association, because they do all the recruitment, they do all the training, right. Except those mandatory camps that you have to go to at the state level, and that's for eligibility to officiate at the postseason level.
Well, the reason I asked that question, because some people are under the impression that, all you need is a pair of glasses to go out to officiate a game. And that's not the case. You have to be certified. You have to go through the associations. You have to put in your due diligence to become a qualified official. Now, the reason we want to know that is, as we've been talking about, there seems to be a dearth of officials coming up. And obviously we have the officials that have been at it for a while are getting older. So through the local associations, we're recruiting new officials. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, what kind of people are we looking for the people who are out there interested to become new officials?
Same kind of people that you would look for if you had a business. You would want someone of personal integrity, dedication, teamwork capabilities, communication skills, just anything that you would look for. Matter of fact, we tell people one of our strongest recruitment tools is, if you come officiate with us, we'll get you ready for not only officiating, but we'll get you ready with those life skills that you need to advance yourself in your employment role. So short answer, good people.
Okay. And something I just thought of, that going back to my background, I wonder how many people that are officials have met more business contacts and more people. For example, I was at a Catholic school that met people in the clergy, met people in religion, things of that nature, because you're networking with other people. So it's a positive experience as a younger person becoming an official.
That's interesting because I hadn't thought about it for a long time, but I ended up working for the Department of Army because a fellow saw me officiate a basketball game
Mm-hmm.
back in 1976. And so when I went to work for him, he gave me the story. And then he said, "Oh, by the way, I've got some advice for you. Don't point with your finger. Use your whole hand." So right off the bat, he and I became extremely close.
Well, and that's I we were telling stories off air. I have one where as a freshman playing basketball, I made a move, and I didn't play a lot then. I made a move with a little spin move and followed up with a jumper, and the official called me for traveling. Which even my sister said that what my sister didn't know much about basketball, so that wasn't a travel. I had the same guy 5 years later in college, made the exact same move. I thought, and I looked at him, and I didn't think he knew who I was. I said, "That wasn't. It wasn't a travel today. It wasn't a travel then." And he said, "Yes, it was." He remembered, and he became someone. And he is one of the best officials around in our area, and he had that memory, but also he got me involved with other officials and those things as well. So yeah, it's a great camaraderie, a great group of people. There's bad apples here and there, obviously, but I think that you learn more about yourself and your integrity and how you're going to do what you're going to do later in life by getting there and having to, I don't want to call it judge other people, but adjudicate other people.
You're adjudicating activity,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just you if you do it long enough, you learn how to communicate. You make your living communicating.
Right.
I make my living through athletics, uh, and as at the end of my career, I now am involved in training and recruiting and uh, retention of officials, and still have as much gusto for the job as I did 40, 50 years ago. Seeing those kids run up and down the court, seeing the officials trail side of them or behind them. My biggest fear is that when that light dims and I don't see the officials because of what we're facing across our nation is a shortage of contest officials that are brought on by several reasons, and we'll discuss
Right.
those, I'm sure, as we go along.
Okay. Well, why don't we do that now? Because that is something I think that is very or guys and gals we have, but also not gaining some. What are the factors you believe that are keeping people from being involved in this, and how can we overcome that?
The two basic reasons,
Oh,
well, they're not basic, they're major reasons. The two major reasons, uh, one is abuse from coaches, uh, uh, spectators, players. But let me make that, I wish I'd have said this first. Not every coach or every player,
right,
or every fan. It's a small number of people that are causing officials, especially 18 to 24-year-olds, to say, nah,
right,
not getting involved in it. Older officials, 10 plus year with the experience to bring other officials along, are saying, enough is enough and I'm out of here. So, and the other one is compensation. And let's talk about the abuse first, and then we can talk about compensation later.
okay,
Uh, and,
okay,
and I would be the last one to tell uh, school administrators who have their hands full with so many major issues looking after those kids and dealing with uh, parental problems, and especially in the face of COVID, with all that we're facing here. That's been a big reason that some of our older officials uh, have decided not to officiate. But here's some advice that I would give to administrators. Appoint a game manager, and by National Federation rules, and that's the rules that most schools participate under, that you got to have a game manager. You don't send out someone unless they are qualified, that they have
Right.
crowd control knowledge, that they have administrative understanding of what's accepted and what's not. And I tell administrators when I have the opportunity to talk with them, if I could give you one bit of advice, is make your classroom decorum standard as you do in your offices, your classrooms,
Right.
your hallways, your playgrounds, to athletic fields, courts, chairs, dugouts, whatever. If that was the behavior decorum, then we would go a long way in ending shortage of officials. And the other thing is coaches. Your players are an untapped source of potential officials. If they're not going to play at the next level, if they want to stay involved in a game they love, stay physically fit, stay mentally into the sports, make a little extra money, as you said earlier, develop tough skin. Those are the kind of things that also translate into the workforce when they quit playing and start their life journey on whatever their employment is going to be. If coaches were to help model civility and professional behavior, which they want to translate and teach to their kids on the athletic field, would be a great place to hone those skills.
Well, one thing that I've noticed, well, actually, a couple things. You made some great points there. When we would have our youth basketball camp, for example, and we would have our varsity players helping with the camp, when we would have the younger kids playing games, our varsity players would become officials.
That's where I
And
started.
almost, yeah, and that's how it started. And almost every year after they got done, they would say, a couple of them come to me like, this is a lot harder than I thought. And it was a lot of fun. You're part of the action, but you're not the focus of the action. But without you, the action doesn't take place. And I think that one of the things that we don't do is we don't move those along to that. And then the second thing that came to mind, especially for the young ladies, that right or wrong, good or bad, they were facing their last year of active sports would have been their senior year of high school. Whether they went on to play, if they couldn't go to college, but there are a lack of recreational sports leagues for them to play in. Say you're playing basketball or soccer or whatever, once you graduate from high school. It just kind of falls away, which I think is a very bad thing to have happen because they've been built up to do this and then there are no rec leagues for them to play in once they've graduated. But there's also a lack of, in my opinion, or from what I've seen, my experience, a lack of young ladies or ladies in general that are officiating the high school, junior high sports. A girls' basketball game usually has men officiating. Not that there's anything wrong with that or right with that, but there were girls that were playing basketball at that age, and then they're out of that. So I think that's a place where we can look at as far as furthering that involvement with sports, and as we talked about earlier, with the networking and other things that go with that.
I'm glad you brought up women officials, and it is an area that we need to concentrate on bringing those women athletes into officiating. But we just this past year at our state championships, we had a men's game refereed by three of our more accomplished women officials.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I recruited this young lady official, worked with her for years and years and years. She's just as in the hallway dainty as she can be, but one of those people that could whip a bear with a switch.
All right.
And seeing her grow and become just one of the best officials in the country, not only in basketball but also in softball.
Well, I think it's a continuation of that, and we spoke beforehand about the love of sport growing up. How do we continue that, or how do you keep fostering that amongst individuals? And this is the way to go. Now, and for those of you that don't know my background, let me give you this real quick. I'm a former coach, and I used to be very hard on officials. Not hard, but I'm, as you can tell, the motor mouth in me was like, as we were talking, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. He's been in the lane for 12 years. Come on, get him out. Yeah. That, I think, was understood. It's when it becomes confrontational. And as you mentioned, there's a problem with that when the coaches are confrontational and then the players become confrontational. I think you can deal with the fans somewhat because that's the nature. And again, they need to have decorum as well. I get that. But when you get the coaches that think that the officials are against them, we're never going to get called with this guy. Why would you say that? He's not officiating against you. He's officiating the game, as you mentioned. And then when your kid, I had a standing rule, at least for me, when a kid mouthed off to an official or gave you that, he sat down. You can't do that. That would be like doing the same thing to your parents or to your, as you said, to your teachers. You don't do that. So I think if we were to emphasize that more as coaches and say, these are the, like you said, this is the decorum you must exhibit, there's where we go. Now, you were also talking about compensation. How do we fix that, or how can we work around that, I guess?
You ready?
Yep.
Change the paradigm.
Okay.
Commensurate, pay officials commensurate with the important role they fill. Changing the paradigm is the fee you pay is an investment, not an expense.
Okay.
Let's listen, former athletic director and coach, and for all of those who still are in those lines of duty, you are a stakeholder. And without officials, right, your livelihood is going to be adversely impacted. In Georgia, we're one of five states in the country that put huge number of our high school players on college rosters. Mm-hmm. Think about the huge economic impact that is to Georgia. Think about the community and state pride.
Right.
Think about your salary. If games on Friday night become played on Thursday night, then you kill your feeder program, your B team. Because in Georgia, you're not going to play on Wednesday night because that's God's night, rightfully so. And Saturday is NCAA day.
And you don't want to get the
recruiters on your back for interfering with their day. So it's a serious issue that it's not the local association's problem. It's not the statewide association's problem. Stakeholders, be aware there is a problem that those handful of coaches, players, and spectators who are behaving recalcitrantly are going to affect or have the potential to affect your livelihood. That's not a threat. That's a fact, observation of a fact that's coming if we don't do something about it. And if coaches influence their kids in civility and in professional behavior, if school administrators appoint proactive game managers, and you can't be sitting in the corner because coaches start the rumble. Players pick up on it. Fans who don't need it also pick up on it, but they bring it on themselves many times without the coaches or players. And they're the ones that are, the spectator is causing the problem, because they're the ones that are coming onto the court after officials and that kind of stuff, especially in amateur sports programs and those types of things. That if we don't, as stakeholders, grab this bull by the horn and ride it to the ground in a safety athletic event, then we're gonna, shame on us.
Well, okay, and that all sounds good, except for coming from, and I know there are going to be athletic directors watching this and administrators above them. Where do we find that? How do we make it work? Is that something? And I know that if you want to shake the trees, you can shake the trees. But and to what you're saying, I only had 2 instances because of weather-related incidents that we had to cancel a game. We couldn't reschedule not because we couldn't find a slot on the schedule, because we couldn't find officials to fill the void. So, but I can see that being a greater problem now than it was then 10 years ago. I understand that. But how do we say, okay, and I agree with you, where do we find that compensation? How do we get people to understand that we need to come up with more funds because schools don't have money as it is now, supposedly? Where do we come up with that? Or does that we have to make it a greater priority?
Well, it's got to be a greater priority. It's like the paradigm shift. Your athletic program mostly is driven by football, basketball, baseball, and softball. And then the minor sports, and I only say minor because that's what everybody refers to them as.
Right. Not minor for the participants, but right.
Yeah, for the cost and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But if we don't have officials and we start having to move our games around, and we're having to do that in Georgia, and it's going to be a problem. But here, Frank, here's the real issue. Paradigm switch. You can either have an expense or you can have an investment. And I can't say enough to athletic directors and coaches, it's your lifestyle. If you, we did a compensation study last year at the Georgia Athletic Officials Association. And what we found out, we started looking at the National Federation. Well, right off the bat, you look and you say, well, shortage of officials is nationwide. I don't think their pay compensation is where it needs to be. So we bypassed that and we went to what are the competitors for our high school officials? ASA, AAU, NAIA,
gotcha.
JUCO, Division III. That's who we're competing with.
Right.
So, and serving on the board of directors of the Georgia Athletic Coaches Association, I've had those discussions. And the ones that are already retired keep punching me in the side. But those who are still building their legacy are intent on what I have to say. Because one, obviously they voted me on their board of directors. They trust me. Some of them even like me. Those that don't keep it to themselves. But it's, and you mentioned it. The real issue is, where does the money come from? Where does the money come for the coach's salary, the athletic director's salary? Where does the money come from for their bonuses? For not bonuses, what is it called in per diem? No, that's not it. That's by Army.
No, but I yeah, right.
But the point is, the booster clubs. Booster clubs. They are helping those coaches in other financial ways. So the state of Tennessee just cut their officials' pay. and one of them contacted me, and I said, okay, the first question ought to be, we're cutting the officials' salary because of lack of spectators coming to the games because of COVID. Well, how much was the head coach's salary reduced? How much was the athletic director's salary reduced? How much was the school administrator's salary reduced? Why did it have to be the officials? Because that's where they look to.
Right.
That's their paradigm.
Right.
And I'm telling you, athletic stakeholders, you better take note of just what keeps our athletic games going. Coaches, players, officials.
I had a boss a long time ago working in a restaurant. He said, if you want to sell a cheeseburger, you have to know how much a cheeseburger costs. Not just the meat, but the bun, the cheese, the pickle, the onion, how much does it cost to wash the plate? How much does it cost for the busboy to work that day? All that. You have to figure out the exact expense of what you're dealing with. Right. Well, when we look at what it costs to put on a ball game, say a volleyball match, we have to understand we're using the gym, we're using electricity, we're doing this, doing that. We have to be able to figure out what it costs for the officials. And if you're saying it's $10 a game, well, that may not be right. We have to figure that out. And maybe, like you said, you change the paradigm and say, this is what the expense is for this game.
We're not we're by no means are we advocating raising prices to athletic events. They're already high as they can be. We want more spectators. We want more people enjoying those athletic events. I know I was I was the board chair of a private school in Georgia, and one of the first things I did was I got the board to approve that all students get in the game free.
Right.
Because you know what's going to happen after that. Mommy and daddy's going to have to come with them. They're going to buy more hamburgers, hot dogs, Coca-Colas, whatever. Booster Club's going to make more money. Booster Club can help, defray some of the costs for the athletic events that aren't making enough to pay for their activities. But at the same time, those people, there are ways if you want to make it, if you want to switch your paradigm between expense and investment, and you start thinking about your longevity and your lifestyle and those kind of things. Those are the things I want coaches and athletic directors and school administrators to focus on. We're not the bad guys. I did a little Twitter the other day, and it's coaches aren't officials' enemies, and officials are not coaches' enemies.
Right.
We're in this together for the kids.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned the exact same thing that almost exact same. I put the junior highs, anyone that was playing a sport that wore the uniform got into the games for free. Yeah. Popcorn, and they're going to do this. And whatever you're missing in ticket sales, you're going to make up in revenue from that. I did the same thing. Yeah. And they even made sure they had their own special personalized pass.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you got somebody there to cheer your players on.
Right.
I mean, it's a win-win.
And it builds programs as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, and shameless plug here for any administrator that's paying attention to this. I know how to make you more money. Contact me. We already have it in place. We'll do something with your broadcasting. That's another story entirely. Okay. But the idea being, how do you do that? And why is it important? Because the reason that we're talking about that, as you said, there are two things that you mentioned that are keeping officials from joining or for being sustainable officials, is that the attitude or the lack of decorum between all the people they come in contact with, and B, compensation. A funny thing that you run across, and I'm sure you do this, being around the people you're talking about, is that you have officials leaving from their day job to get to games for the early games, or they're working extra time. They're doing this, they're doing that. And they're being compensated by one check that doesn't usually cover their travel. They're being compensated by one check that doesn't usually cover their time. And they're being compensated by one check that usually doesn't compensate them for leaving where they left. And we don't, as just lay people, we don't understand how much effort is put into being an official. And we have to make that, I believe, as easy for them to do or to not think about what they're giving up in order to be an official. Not just the ones that have been doing it for 20, 25 years, but the ones we're trying to recruit. Because what is your pitch if you're going to somebody that's 22 years old and say, we want you to be an official. Now, here's what you're going to experience. Fans are going to yell at you. Coaches are going to yell at you. Players are going to yell at you. They're going to call you all kinds of things and don't even think about wearing glasses because they're going to really get on you about that. Second, we may ask you to leave your job early. We may not have the schedule in place for you until the day of because of weather and other related incidents. We may not pay you on time because the business office may mess up your check. We may not have a place for you to change clothes or to be ready to go. We may ask you to change in an office over here or whatever. And then at the end of the game, we might give you some popcorn and send you on your way. How can you recruit people with that? What do we do to fix that? I think that's where we're at right now. We have to give you a positive reason to be an official. And there are positive reasons. And for anyone watching should understand that may not sound that great, but what do they get in return?
Let me boil it down to two things. One sentence. Model exceptional behavior, change paradigm from expense to investment.
Mm-hmm.
End of sentence.
Okay. And that's great. But if I'm just so I can kind of throw this out there, I kind of like to tie everything up in a bow. If I'm that former second string cornerback and I'm working down the street someplace and I'm happy living in my hometown, if someone approaches me and says, I think you'd be a good official, why would they do it?
Why officiate?
Why officiate?
Love of sport. Stay involved in sports. Stay physically fit. Give back to the community. Understand the benefits kids receive from athletics. Networking, life lessons, responsibility, conflict resolution, problem solving, common sense decision making. Build confidence, goal setting, and communication skills. Teamwork, make lifelong friends. Word is bond, integrity. Make a little money, develop tough skin.
There you go. And I will tell you that I was at a high school basketball sectional, and I was scouting. I wasn't involved in it. I was scouting, so I tried to sit as far away from everybody else so I could immerse myself in the game. And one official comes up after he'd done the first game. And another official came up after he'd done the first game. And then I noticed they kind of sat in a pack of 2. Then it was 5. Then it was 9. And I realized these guys aren't even doing this game. They're not even involved in this slate of games at all. They came because they don't have a chance to hang out that much during the regular season. And they just came to hang out and to have that camaraderie. And if anyone tells you that that's not important in any aspect of life, they're full of whatever you want to say they're full of. I got to see officials as people, and they were genuinely fond of each other. They were genuinely fond of what they were doing. And of course, one of them said, in the second quarter, you missed that call. They had to give him a little shot. But yeah, that's the way it is. So I guess the thing is, for the 10 or so items you ticked off, I think part of it is, and they all know each other. They all work together, or they worked with someone who knows each other. It's a great crew of people. It really is. As we said, there's going to be one bad apple here and there. but you have people that you're going to know for the next, as you said, 10, 15, 40 years. How many crews of officials do you know that their kids are officials or their nieces or nephews? Or it's a great group of people. And you can do multiple sports. You can get out and get some fresh air, do some softball, do some soccer, go inside, do some volleyball, do some basketball. I think it's a great thing. So, Alan, I appreciate you being here and telling us why we need to do this and we need to get more people involved. How else can we spread the word? Who else we need to talk to?
Well, this is a great opportunity, and I hope you really know how much I appreciate it. One, just how much I've enjoyed talking with you. And I'd like to close up with this final thought. What needs to change? Change paradigm. Pay raise becomes an investment, not an expense. Acknowledge competition, competitors for our officials, AAU, ASA, junior college, NAIA, Division III, Nike, Adidas, Amazon. They may not be into the sports stuff right now, but they will be soon. Athletic stakeholders awareness of the shortage. Schools to develop classroom decorum protocol to all athletic events. Model civility, courtesy. Do not tolerate disruptive, threatening behavior from anyone. Be proactive. In closing, by instilling a culture of respect and professionalism, we can help resolve a potentially dangerous problem facing amateur athletics.
Well, I think that from someone who's been involved in sports for a long time, and I still want that that love to be transferred to other people. Again, I see that in officials, and that passion. I see that in officials, and I see that without them, and I've witnessed this myself, with the dearth of officials, it makes it harder for an administrator to do their job. If you only have four guys on the list and you've got to reschedule three games, well, you're in trouble. So you need to have that larger group of people involved. And I don't think that, again, it wasn't my purse strings I was trying to yank open, but I don't think it's too much to ask to say we need to figure out a way to make sure this works better so we don't have to worry about, you know, somebody's dad having an officiated game that you shouldn't do that anyway. But in the middle of a contest going, we don't have anybody, everybody go home. So again, I appreciate this. Anything I can do to spread the word, I will. I know several people I want to make sure that see this. And
here's one thing we didn't discuss. What are the benefits of high school athletics? Increased graduation rates.
True.
Large number of athletic earning college scholarships, degrees, a source of state and community pride, an opportunity for student athletes, and a huge economic boost to the state at large.
And I think something that I find important to that is also understanding, and something that we're in I believe in great need of now, is tolerance and understanding. You know, you can want to beat the other team, but you don't want to beat the other team. You want to win the contest, but you don't have to destroy them. I think that right now, and not to get on a political soapbox from either side, we were talking about civility, and we need to learn on whatever platform you stand on how to treat the other side better, because the other side is just a mirror image of you if you really think about it. They may think differently than you do, but they're still people just like yourselves. And I think that we get that, especially when you're talking like a crosstown rivalry or something like that. You really want to beat them because you know them. It's like playing against your brother. I want to beat my brother in everything. I can't stand him winning, but it doesn't mean that I don't want him around. He's the one that's
at the end of the day, you still love him.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. He's never going to see this. So,
Frank, you got to remember now. I had a 20-minute conversation with you before we started this, and I just added tolerance and understanding to my list. Those are absolutely worthy of our working toward.
And I think that if we keep those things in mind, and your directive is right, if you keep those things in mind, we will be able to recruit more officials and we'd be able to increase what we do. We all want these events to go off smoothly. We want them to go off as well as we possibly can, not only just for the event itself, but for the enjoyment and the memories of the event. I remember certain games, certain things, and I remember the event. I remember being there with my teammates, being there when my family could see me, being there with coaches and other people, the fans, and saying, "Wow, that was great." Well, that doesn't happen if you don't have anybody to officiate the game. That doesn't happen if you don't have anyone to officiate the game well. That doesn't happen at all if you do not. The memories don't exist if we don't have officials. So I think that's something we need to consider all across the board, that we have to have the officials involved in order to have these great events that we want to have. And as an administrator, I can plan the whole thing. I can plan a shootout and a tournament and all this stuff. We had a soccer shootout. I didn't do the planning of it, but someone else did, but I at least had to be there for it. And when I was there, like, the officials, not only did they officiate the games, they officiated themselves. Well, once we put the schedule up, they knew where to be, how to get there, where to get their water. We didn't have to remind them of stuff. They were professionals. And the tournament, people would come up to me afterwards and say, "This thing went off without a hitch. It was great." I went, "I just stood here. I didn't do anything. I might have written down a few things so people knew where to go. After that, it was done. If the game was supposed to start at 9:40, the official started at 9:40. I didn't have to go ring a bell or tell them. They took care of it. If it was score was supposed to be posted and reported there, done. I didn't have to go to each field, so what was the score? The officials took care of it because that's what they do. And you may not see that. You may not notice that if you're someone that's not involved in it, but that's what you're supposed to not notice. And again, I think, Alan, this is a great thing. Like I said, anything I can do to help pass the word, anyone you can think of that we should talk to about it, I want to talk to them. Anything at all, because our sports are in the hands of your guys.
Well, I would just say that it would go without saying that there are a small number of officials that aren't where we're talking about. Like I said earlier, there are some coaches, players, spectators, but it's a small group that's causing us problems. And let's work together to be proactive, to make sure that all stakeholders know the risk in not accomplishing the things we're talking about. And I, by all means, don't have the end answer. Would love to hear from anybody that has examples or ways that might help us do our job better.
Well, we'll make sure we get all the information that you gave us as far as who to contact and the website and all that. We'll make sure we get that online. That'll appear on the bottom line of this as we're talking as well. And we'll make sure we pass it along. And this was fantastic. Thanks again.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank.